Sal Berry.
Hey Panini, I'm writing an article. Can I get a little bit of information on this new set? And then they ignore me for ever.
And Tim Parrish.
I hate Nashville. I hate country music. This place sucks. And Carrie Underpants and her husband should just go away.
This is the Puck Junk Podcast.
Welcome to another edition of the Puck Junk Podcast. Sal Berry here, along with Tim Parrish, the real DFG on Twitter. And today we're going to talk about a bunch of hockey goodness. We're going to talk a little bit about hockey cards, about Auston Matthews' exclusive agreement with Upper Deck for trading card autographs. And then we're going to also talk maybe a little bit of other trading card stuff. And then definitely today, the bulk of it is going to be about the 2016 Hall of Fame inductees. Tim, how are you this wonderful evening or morning or whenever you're listening to this?
I am fantastic. If I were any better, I'd be twins.
Twin Tims. I like it. What will your twins' name be?
Twins' name?
Would it be Mitt?
I don't know if I could go right out with that. It'd have to be something different.
Well,
Probably a Spanish name.
Mitt would be like the backwards of Tim, right?
It would.
So that would be
probably use something Spanish.
But I think Mitt would be awesome. But Spanish, like Rolando or something.
It reminds me of Mitt Romney. I don't like that guy.
I don't like that guy either. Oh man, let's not talk politics because
I'd rather not, because I know the two of us differ on opinion, just considering some of the Facebook posts I saw you post.
Wait, what? No, I didn't post. I'm not a Trump supporter.
I understand. Not many people are.
And but honestly, I wrote in Bernie Sanders on my ballot.
Oh yeah.
Well, I knew that Hillary was going to win the state anyway, so it was a protest vote. Like I could have voted for Mayor McCheese and it wouldn't have mattered. So but I was hoping that Sanders would get enough protest votes that at least somebody'd say, oh, and he surprisingly got X amount of votes, and maybe that would have been 5% and would have gotten him on the ballot next time and whatever. But it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. It doesn't work the way most ignorant Americans thought it was going to work, but oh well, that's another discussion entirely.
All right, so let's just talk a little bit about this Auston Matthews deal. So basically, today I got an email from Upper Deck's. We got a press release from them, and so it reads: Upper Deck signs #1 NHL draft pick Auston Matthews to exclusive autographed trading card deal. So they're very clear in this press release that it's not like a Connor McDavid thing where Connor McDavid will only sign pucks for Upper Deck, and Connor McDavid will only sign jerseys for Upper Deck. This seems to be limited just to trading cards, and this seems to be kind of as a way to keep Leaf from doing one of those deals like what they did with, oh man, now his name's escaping me. The guy who's...
Jack Eichel.
Jack Eichel. He's been injured all season, so, out of sight, out of mind. So, what's your take on this? I know you just found out about it 5 seconds ago. You're like, really, Upper Deck, Auston Matthews, tell me more.
Yeah, I didn't get the email, so I don't know. I guess I've been banned or something.
I think I'm just in the know.
We talked about the whole Connor McDavid thing and having the exclusive to sign pretty much everything. With this being limited trading cards, I mean, obviously, Upper Deck's pretty much the only one that actually has that carte blanche to make any NHL product that they want. But if that license goes away, depending on how long this exclusive is supposed to last, you may not see anything in other products if there's ever that possibility. I know with Leaf, most of the Auston Matthews stuff is minor league. I don't know that they put out anything maybe in this year's product. I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be kind of hard because he played, over in Switzerland last season. So, it's kind of, I'm sure they could have approached the Swiss team and been like, hey, we need a photo and we'll pay you. And they probably would have been like, sure, because it just raises their profile to be in an American product. I'm not super surprised. Considering that Matthews had that 4-goal first game that, everybody talked about, and rightly so.
After that game, everybody was ready to crown him king.
Right.
He looked impressive, but a lot of that was pure adrenaline.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's awesome. But another thing that's kind of interesting, just in Upper Deck news, something that I noticed a couple days ago, and I can't quite put my finger on what day it was, but they sent me an email saying Upper Deck Series 2 is almost sold out on e-Pack, so if you were going to buy some now. And then, literally the very next day, they took it off of e-Pack. What's funny is that they did the same thing with Series 1, where it was I forget when it was, but they were they sent an email and it said Upper Deck Series 1 is going to be off of e-Pack, and then, the next day, they took it off of e-Pack. So I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Oh.
I mean, I know they say they submit a finite supply to e-Pack, but I don't know. It just seems a little janky that it's oh, it's gonna sell out, so you better buy some, and then it sells out.
Well, they warned you. I mean, that's really it. There's two sides to that whole thing too, and we've made this argument before: is e-Pack watering down the physical card market? And you kind of. You have that from both perspectives. You have the one instance where they start funneling stuff and you start wondering, okay, how much of this has been sent to electronic and how much of it is actually real? So obviously cutting it off, they got to cut it off at some point, because guess what just came? Series 1 for this year.
Right. Right. So you can't have people buying.
You're going to see the transition over to the new stuff. And, if you made Series 1 and Series 2 available forever and eventually somebody pulled, jersey cards and whatnot, you're going to find the inability to get them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, we've talked about this before about e-Pack watering down. I mean, for inserts, yes. For base cards, no, obviously. So it's really interesting that, you go to COMC and a base card is $1 and an insert card is 26 cents.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. How about I mean, what you still playing around with the Topps Skate?
Oh yeah, of course.
What's your latest and greatest on that?
I like the fact that they started releasing more of those focus cards. Those are pretty cool.
Yes.
I saw the what was the new one? Was it Taze or Kane?
Kane. That's the one that came out today.
Yeah, I pulled the Giroux one. Didn't get the
Crawford.
No, there was one from the Rangers.
Oh, the Russian kid that scored that goal. Yeah.
I didn't get that one because that one was gone pretty quick.
I got that one, believe it or not.
I haven't opened any of the Kane pack to try to get those yet.
Well,
but those are pretty cool.
Did you participate in their vote on Election Day? Their online vote? Who'd you vote for? I need to ask.
I voted for Stanley Cup champion Phil Kessel.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Trump, but okay. Kessel, yeah. Right.
I voted for Stanley Cup champion winning Phil Kessel.
Right.
That's who I voted
and
for.
hot dog eating champ Phil Kessel.
Yes.
And
but unfortunately, Kessel didn't win, and Ryan Kessler won because I think he had the better deal.
No, Kessel did win.
No, I didn't think Kessel won because Kessel's prize was
improved odds on pulling.
I thought his was something else.
Nope, his was improved odds on pulling. His was improved odds on pulling inserts. So yeah. I was able to get the Giroux card, focus card in 2 packs, and I think it took me maybe 3 packs to get the Rangers focus card, and then I blew the rest of my coins, my fake money, my funny money, and I haven't bought any coins since that initial buy, the first week. So I've just been using my free coins. I save them up and then I spend them all in one time, and I ended up pulling a bunch of 3 stars that week's 3 stars with pretty good odds, and I think we have the odds until until Wednesday, so I'm gonna just so I'm gonna wait another day and then I'm gonna try to pull that Kane card. But yeah, I like the fact that they're doing more focus. I haven't been
doing a lot of insert packs as much. Most of what I buy I pick up the just the bonus base packs.
Yeah.
Because I'm working on. See, here's my set builder. Even on digital, I'm working on sets. I have all the white base. I'm pretty close on green. I'm working on red right now. So
see, and you know what? Building the sets have taken a back seat to actually playing the daily fantasy hockey. I play in the 2 free hockey games, and I started out doing okay in them. I mean, at worst you get 500 coins if your guys score at least 500 or more points, you get 500 coins. But I will admit that I did break down and I started buying some silver packs. You know what? The boost on a silver card is 5 times.
Right.
So Crosby scores a goal, that's 100 points. But if you have a silver Crosby, which I do not, that's 500 points. So I bought a pack.
Yeah, but you got the silver McDavid, didn't you?
I got 2 of them now.
2 of them.
2 of them, and yeah.
What the heck?
Well, and you can play them both. So I mean, in like one game, or one night, I think I was playing like McDavid, Dubnyk, Bergeron. I'm trying to think who else I had. Carlson on the Senators, and those guys, and Seabrook, and all of those guys have been like really solid. So yeah, I actually paid money for digital cards. I mean, a pack is like $13.99 for 9 silver cards, and it's kind of like buying your way to having better players. And I've been finishing within, like, there's about 2,000 people that play, and now I each day, and I finish within like the top 100. Usually,
wow.
Yeah. So now instead of just getting the 500 coins, I get a pack, either just a regular pack with just all white cards. Yesterday, I finished something like 47th out of like 2,000, which is like the upper 3%. Not to toot my own horn, because again, when you pull good cards of good players, I mean, one of the cards I got was Thomas Greiss, who hasn't played like any games, and if he does, they're not very. Hasn't been very good, at least.
Well, he's Halak's backup.
Right. You know, even a silver Halak would be better. Right. Right. Well, goalies, I mean, and this could be a topic for a whole other conversation, but goalies are just really streaky because they could win the game, but they could do something like minus 600 points if you have like a high enough boost.
That's why I don't play goalies.
Yeah, but see, when I play Dubnyk, he's been doing great for me. I mean, he's been like one of the top 4, top 5 goalies all season. So my silver Dubnyk card will get me like 1,000 points in a fantasy game. But like my red Cam Talbot like blew up in my face yesterday when the Oilers lost.
Yeah, I had Matt Murray. I had like a red or a blue Matt Murray, and he got me. I don't remember what it was, like 700 or 800 points in one game. But I haven't used the goalie since then.
Hey, you know, as long as we're on the topic of hockey cards, you mentioned that your kids opened up some Neo Retro cards the other day.
Yes. We stopped by Baseball Card Exchange to see if they had anything new and interesting and exciting, and they had a table with a bunch of discounted boxes, so we picked up a box of 91-92 Stadium Club, and the kids split it way 3 ways. And
I have to
open the pack.
I have to ask, how much was the box?
It was a whopping $5.
$5. That's all you should pay for a box of 91-92 Stadium Club. Do you happen to recall what packs cost back in the day of Stadium Club?
If I remember correctly, they were about $1 or more.
Okay, I honestly don't remember. I thought they were like, I want to say they were like $2.50 a pack, but that could have been a couple years later.
I was gonna say I'm not sure $2.50 was right, but I can tell you right now that these boxes came from Kmart.
Okay.
Back in 1991.
Oh, excellent.
And they were $1.79 a pack because they still have the sticker on them.
Bless your soul for sharing this information with me, because that's great. You know what? Maybe $2.50 was like what they charged at like card stores and comic shops, because I used to work in a comic shop, and my boss would order the hockey cards, and then there'd go my week's pay. You know, like box of Score, okay, box of Pro Set, sure. So, anyways.
I cut the top off the box, and it has a Kmart the Kmart pricing sticker. It says it's $1.79. So I saw it on the table. I'm like, wow, this whole box is $1.79. But that's the
they were like, no, it's $5. So they opened these packs.
But, yeah, they opened the packs, and it was fun to watch them going through them all because, I mean, first of all, half the packs and cards are stuck together because they have the glossy print on them and, you know, the silver foil along the bottom. But for the most part, they were pretty good. I mean, they were going through them all and reading off the names as they were getting them, and surprisingly enough, they knew a lot of the players, probably because of me. But,
so they weren't like who?
And yes, they did pull the Yager mullet card.
And were they like, oh my god, an active player?
I'm pretty sure that he was the only active player in that whole box.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's the only guy who's been playing since that season and is still playing.
I was going to say, I don't think there was another one pulled out of there.
No. Hey, did you hear real quick, as we transition, we're going to talk Hall of Fame in a minute, but, you know, the other day the Blues announced their initial lineup of the alumni that are going to be playing in their alumni game against the Blackhawks alumni, and get who's going to be playing in net for them.
For the Blues?
For the Blues.
I don't know.
I'll give you a hint.
It's not going to be...
He also played for the New Jersey Devils.
Oh, are you serious? They're putting Brodeur in that?
I think he's putting himself in that. I think he's like, no, I'm the assistant GM. I should be in this game because, you know, I retired a Blue. And I just think that's funny because I think I know when the Blackhawks played the Minnesota alumni, and most of them were North Stars, they were taking that game seriously. They pulled their goalie. I mean, the North Stars, the alumni North Stars, whatever, got an empty net goal, but Troy Murray dived to try to keep the puck from going in because they really wanted to win that game. I mean, they were really trying. Roenick was trying. Savard was trying. Everybody was putting in an effort to beat the ex-North Stars and Wild team. So I think that if this is going to be the same, you know, if they're going to have that same mindset, it's going to be pretty freaking hard when you have Martin Brodeur in net for the Blues alumni and not like Mike Liut or someone who's like, you know, pushing 60.
Well, they can't have him in there the whole time, can they? I mean, they usually have backup goaltenders that they shift in and out, wouldn't they?
I think it's fun when they have like three well, if they do 3 periods, I think it's good when they have 3 goalies. I think that's always nice.
Yeah.
You know, everybody gets a turn then. Everybody's a winner.
So it's going to be Brodeur versus who? Darren Pang?
Now that'd be funny because Pang works for the Blues as a color commentator, so that'd be interesting. That would actually be kind of cool. You know,
Jimmy Waite, maybe?
I could see Jimmy Waite being in there because he's their goaltending coach, and he's...
Oh,
yeah.
How about Murray Bannerman?
He's still around, but I don't remember the last time he played in an alumni game. I'd love to see Alain Chevrier.
Have they announced their roster?
No, the Blackhawks haven't announced their roster yet, and the Blues I don't remember other than seeing Brodeur, and I'm just like, oh, okay, that's funny. But yeah, Bannerman would be, you know, or like Jocelyn Thibault is still young enough that he could go in there and, you know, kick ass as far as alumni games go, you know, because the guys who just retired like 5 years ago have a clear advantage over the guys who retired like 20 years ago. So,
right. Yeah, that's usually always the case when you have that kind of stuff goes on.
You know, when you put in somebody like a Mike Palmateer or something, and then, you know, they're going to give up 8 goals.
Yeah.
And they're going to be scored by, like, Mark Recchi or whoever's playing on the other alumni team.
Right. Mark Recchi could play on a lot of people's alumni team.
Yeah, he could probably play for the Islanders.
In fact, Mark Recchi is still one of my, I guess, I don't know what you would call it, but one of my long shot picks for making the Hall of Fame. I think he deserves to be in there.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny too because talking about Hall of Fame, so we have our 2016 class that was inducted Monday night. Eric Lindros, Sergei Makarov, Rogie Vachon, and Pat Quinn. What's your take on this year's inductee class?
Well, I mean, it's about time that Rogie got his call. I mean, he's only been eligible for 35 years. But he was passed over a lot of times for other players, and yeah, if you look stat wise and everything else, there's been a lot of guys that maybe were more deserving than he was. But you got to look at what he was. I mean, he was the superstar goalie on the Kings. He was a great goalie for the Canadians beforehand, but it happened that Ken Dryden came along and played like a beast, and Rogie was still young at the time and wanted to be the number one goaltender, and they moved him over to the Kings, and he was a star on the Kings for some pretty rough King teams, but I think he deserves to be there, not only for his game that he played, but also for the work that he did for the team afterwards. So that's kind of my take on that one. Pat Quinn, that was an obvious choice. He only passed away, a couple years ago. And, Pat Quinn was a pillar of the game of hockey, and definitely a huge ambassador for the game as a coach and even as a player. I mean, look, he was brought on after he retired, after he quit playing hockey. He was immediately put on staff, to work for the team, and he did ever since, and was a coach in the league for somewhat, 35 years, something like that?
I don't know about that, but long time. I mean, let's see here.
I mean, it was a very long time.
Oh yeah, actually.
But,
4, 5, 6,
yeah.
7.
I think it was pretty close to that.
12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
I don't know. As a
20
coach,
years, but that's a damn
years?
long time as a coach.
Yeah. Plus, he coached World Cup teams. He coached Team Canada. I mean, he did it all.
Won the Jack Adams 2 times.
Right. So I think that's definitely a deserving position in the builder category. Makarov, I have no problem with whatsoever, because you got to remember, this is the Hockey Hall of Fame, not the NHL Hall of Fame. So the guy was a superstar world before he even came to the NHL. And, coming over here at the age of, the ripe old age of 31 and winning the Rookie of the Year award, definitely his body of work for the Soviet Union and for Russia is just, I mean, it was amazing. And the fact that it is the Hockey Hall of Fame and not just the NHL Hall of Fame, he definitely deserves to be there. And of course, Lindros, I mean, I don't know, Lindros is kind of a polarizing character, because you got to look at, if you look at somebody's total body of work as far as their entire career, you could look at the first half of Lindros' career and still make a case for him being in the Hall of Fame without looking at the last half of his career.
Yes.
Because obviously being plagued by injuries, the concussions, I mean, we've all heard the story. We all know the issues. His last season was 2007. He scored 5 goals.
Yes.
I mean, so the whole body of work of the last half of his season last half of his career is totally different than the impact he had on the game in the first part of it. And that was amazing.
Isn't that true, though, of most NHL superstars, where the first half of their career, there's a span where they're awesome, and then they kind of peter out at the end, and they're just okay. But they're I mean, I'm trying to think of Wayne Gretzky, right? I believe in his last couple of seasons, I think he still finished in the top 10 in scoring or something like that. I mean, and he was still by far better than a lot of the other players. Okay, maybe Gretzky's a terrible example, because you can't really compare anybody to Gretzky, and you can't really compare anybody to Lemieux. But I'm just thinking.
Well, you can definitely make a case for the environments that they played in. I mean, look at Gretzky. Gretzky played on the Oilers team, Hall of Famers. He had a supporting cast that was amazing. So then Gretzky goes to the Kings with maybe some players that were good in their own right, but look how much better they became when he came to their team.
Yeah.
I mean, prime example, guy that's not in the Hall of Fame, Bernie Nichols. Bernie Nichols was a good player. When Gretzky got there, he was an awesome player.
Right.
And it was all because number 99 was playing on that team. And so, supporting cast makes a big difference. Lemieux played on some of the worst Penguin teams ever that were just awful. But until they started getting that supporting cast to put around him, then he was good. He was great. But, I think people judge a lot of times Hall of Fame worthiness by the number of cups that you have. And
yeah, that's unfair.
Probably why. Well, and yeah, it can be because you're being elected to the Hall of Fame not because of your body of work, not necessarily because of the team. And hockey is a team sport, and you can't win with one player. You can win with a team. You can't win with one player. And I think Lindros got overshadowed a lot of times because of the simple fact that he doesn't have any cups.
Yeah, and but you got to remember, they had that Legion of Doom line, and then what did they do? They trade away Michael Renberg. And I guess I don't really know much about that trade. All I know is that it seemed stupid at the time. If you think about it, and I know that there doesn't seem to be a lot of really great hockey lines with great nicknames anymore. They're always like the so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so line, right? Like they always talk about the Secord Savard Larmer line in Chicago. But,
lines don't have nicknames is what you're saying.
Right, but they don't have nicknames and they don't last. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, when I think of, like, the Legion of Doom line, that was just a monster line. Why would you break that up?
Well, monster in literal terms, because those three guys on that line were huge.
Yes. Yeah, and
they were monsters themselves.
Right, and John LeClair put up 3 consecutive 50 or more goal seasons when he played with Lindros.
And you look at his body of work after the fact.
Right. So speaking of body of work, like when we talk about like guys who are like in the Hall of Fame and like they had, Dennis Savard, right? 10 great years in Chicago. Then he went to Montreal and he was just good. He was good. He was great. But he wasn't the same. And then he went to Tampa Bay, and then he came back to Chicago, and he was in and out of the lineup, and he just wasn't the same. But nobody looks at like the 96-97 season and say, Dennis Savard doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. They look at, his, 5 consecutive 100-point seasons in the 80s and say, wow. Or Dale Hawerchuk is like another one, right? So I think people want to pick on Lindros even more for the latter third, we'll say, of his career, because he had 10 good seasons. His first season in New York was good.
Well, and like I said, that's probably why he got passed over for as many years as he did for other players, and that's simple because
expectations too high.
Well, I don't think it's that necessarily that. I think it's because I think he lived up to his expectations.
Oh yeah,
above and beyond that. But I think recent memory, is exactly that. It's recent memory. So you remember the last couple of things you saw, and that body of work wasn't as good as. And that's you can't fault the guy because, the injuries plague a lot of people. I mean, look at players that had to retire or their careers were cut short because of injury. Bobby Orr,
Mike Bossy.
There's one of the big examples. Mike Bossy's another one. Mario Lemieux's another one. I mean, there's a list of superstar Hall of Fame players that could have played longer, and maybe you would have seen their careers kind of peter out towards the end. Just because you get older, the league starts to pass you by because everybody's getting younger and getting quicker, and what do you have left? Lindros was one of those ones that his hype was huge. I mean, he's the biggest guy coming into the league, both physically and the hype machine behind it. Nobody had that kind of hype since probably Gretzky and Lemieux.
Real quick, let me just say this. He was like the Shaquille O'Neal of hockey, and I always liked that about him because I remember how much hype there was around Shaquille O'Neal before he even played an NBA game, and it was cool as a hockey fan in America, in Chicago, where hockey was totally underhyped, to have that kind of player, like our Shaquille O'Neal, our big guy, physically big guy, but also this guy is going to be a superstar, and he was. Sorry, I just had to throw that out there.
Well, and that's the thing, because a lot of people get hyped, before a draft, before the NHL draft, there's always those guys, recent memory, Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel, Auston Matthews. And it's like, okay, there's all this hype surrounding these guys. Are they going to live up to expectations? And it's a pretty big hit or miss. Here's a guy that had the potential of coming into the league well before he actually did, and then when he finally got there was all the controversy over him being drafted by the Nordiques and him flat out saying he was not going to play for that organization because he wasn't going to play for that management team. He wanted nothing to do with it and refused. And then the whole thing with, well, the Flyers want him, the Rangers want him, who's going to give me the best deal?
The Blackhawks almost got him too. You know what the hang-up was?
With the Blackhawks?
Yeah.
I've never heard the Blackhawks
story.
Yeah,
the Blackhawks almost got him.
I've heard the hotel room story in the middle of the night when Rangers representatives and Flyer representatives were both brought in, and, okay, what are you going to give me? And it came down to the actual dollar amount.
Yeah, well, that was it. It was money. The Blackhawks would not part with money. Mike Keenan had engineered a trade that would have sent... now, I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on this. I know they were going to send Steve Larmer and Ed Belfour. They would have kept Jeremy Roenick. They would have gotten Lindros. I think they would have gotten Ron Hextall because, Keenan loved Ron Hextall. So he would have gotten Hextall as part of that trade. That would have been huge for the Blackhawks because the Blackhawks, as you recall, they lost to the Penguins that year, having a big center. I mean, if you look at
they did.
If you look at all those teams had two big centers, for not physically big, just superstar centers. I mean, the Pens had Lemieux and they had Francis. The Red Wings had Yzerman and Fedorov. You need to have those two centers, and the Hawk that would have done it for the Blackhawks, but they wouldn't part with the money that Bill Wirtz, the team owner, wouldn't part with the money.
Well, and that you see, history shows you that's really what it boiled down to. I mean, $15 million was the price, plus, all the guys that actually got dealt away. I mean, they got Forsberg, Hextall, Mike Ricci, Chris Simon. I think there was like 3 or 4 other guys. Steve Duchesne, I think, was in that deal.
Yeah.
But plus $1 million. I mean, this was unprecedented at that point, that a team was willing to, that any team, not just one team, but multiple teams were willing to dump star players and potential superstar players, to go and get Lindros. So, I mean, that shows you the impact that he had in the minds of the hockey gurus that were out there. And then when he got there and he got out on the ice, he was a force to be reckoned with. And, the way he played, the game he played was a very physical game. The guy could go out there and just crush people. And that's what he did day in and day out. And not only that, he could score. And so, I mean, there weren't players like that in the league.
No, I mean,
at that time. And I don't necessarily think there's really been many players you can compare him to since.
Like a Cam Neely or a Mark Messier, that big power forward.
Yeah, you're talking about these power guys that are big and physical, and you don't see that.
So I got an Eric Lindros story for you real quick. I met him back in 91. I was at the NHL All-Star Game in 1991. It was at Chicago Stadium, and my friend, a kid that lived in the neighborhood, we used to trade cards with each other. So he was there and I was there, and the day before we they had the skills competition, and I met up with my friend and we probably traded cards or something, and he says to me, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll buy a Lindros rookie off of you." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll bring it. I'll be here for the All-Star game tomorrow. I'll bring that, right?" So I brought a bunch of cards to trade him or sell him or whatever, and I decided to not bring an Eric Lindros card because I was like, you know what? I'm not going to sell it to him. This card's going to be worth a lot of money. And I don't know, I maybe had 3 of them or whatever. And I still kick myself for not bringing that because it's intermission. My aunt runs back to the seat. She goes out to get, bathroom break or soda. I don't remember. She runs back to the seats like a minute later. She's like, "Come here now." So I go running out into the hallway, and there's a mob of people swarmed around Eric Lindros, who was attending the 91 All-Star game just to see it. And this was one of the catalysts for him wanting to go to a big market team. He didn't want to go to, after this point, he didn't want to play in a small market. He wanted to play in a big market, and, there were articles written saying how excited he was about going to Chicago and just seeing what it's like, what a big city is like. And, he's signing autographs for everybody. There's a mob of people around him. So, dummy me, I didn't bring my Lindros card. I handed him my ticket stub, and he signed the back of it. And it's just like an indiscriminate scribble. But,
Still have that?
I still have, it was from my 91 All-Star Game ticket stub. So, yeah, I still have that. And I was happy to have a Lindros autograph even before he played a single NHL game. But, I always remember not bringing a card of him and just regretting that because I would have had that signed in a ballpoint pen and looked at it 25 years later and been like, yeah, I remember that day like it was 25 years ago.
And I'm sure at the time you never thought I was having a Hall of Famer sign my...
I don't know. I kind of had we all had big expectations for him. And, when you're a kid, that's magnified. Actually,
True.
It was funny because, I thought he was going to win Rookie of the Year, and he didn't because Teemu Selanne did. And Teemu Selanne had a way better record, but Teemu Selanne was also a couple years older. But, it's funny. You mentioned controversy, and I actually wanted to quiz you on this. So no Googling, and okay if you don't get these because this is only nerd shit that maybe Sal would remember. So... all 4 of these players, when I was thinking about them today, Lindros, Makarov, Vachon, and Quinn, had some controversy in their careers. And Lindros actually had 2 things. Well, actually, many things. So we know the Nordiques thing. Can you name another controversy in his career? There's a couple of right answers here.
I was going to say, I don't know if it's considered controversy, but the thing that basically took him out and ended his career, that Scott Stevens hit, that open ice hit to the head. I mean, that was sort of controversial.
Okay.
But at the time, we didn't have all the headshot rules and everything back then, so.
I would also accept his refusing to play for the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds when he was drafted by them in the OHL draft. That's true. That's why he went to Oshawa, because he did not want to play, or his parents didn't want him to play there. And then
it was his parents' decision, yes.
Yes, his parents. His parents really meddled with his career. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But they...
Well, he's in the Hall of Fame, so there you go.
There you go, right. Mama knows best, right? And then also, I mean, you could say like the holdout in 2001. Although, from what I understand, the Flyers wanted to sign him to a 2-way deal that could send him to the minors. And you know what? F that. If you've been in the NHL for 9 years and you produced at the rate that Lindros produced at, which was more than a point per game in his first 9 years, when he played with the Flyers, you don't give a guy a 2-way contract because he's had some concussion problems. Because that cuts into his games, but that wasn't affecting his... Well, it did ultimately affect his performance, but that's really insulting. So I can understand why he would hold out and say screw that before they ended up trading him to the Rangers. What about Makarov? Go ahead. What is your thought?
I was just saying I can't think of any other ones because I.
Well, you brought it up. You brought it up earlier with Makarov.
I did?
Yeah.
Oh, with him. Oh, the fact that he became the the rookie 31, and not long after that, they changed the rule to players have to be under the age of, what is it, 25?
26, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, I mean, the guy was a superstar in the world, and the Russians finally said, "Okay, we'll allow you to go play in the NHL." You know, he's already, I don't want to say past the prime of his career.
No, he was.
I mean, he had already done a lot at that point, and the fact that he could come over to the United States as an aged veteran in world competition and become the rookie of the year in that NHL was something.
So let me ask you this: true or false? Did Wayne Gretzky win the Rookie of the Year honors in his first NHL season?
Did Wayne Gretzky?
Yes.
No.
Why not?
Because he didn't.
Because he played.
He wasn't. Yeah.
He
wasn't. He was
the
WHL.
WHA.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
WHA.
So
Sorry.
Players who played in the WHA were not considered rookies.
They weren't rookies because it was professional hockey.
Right. So this just shows you how far the NHL had their heads up their butts by, 10 years later. So in 79, they're like, no, Gretzky, you played in the WHA. You can't be a rookie. But in 89, Makarov and those guys come over, and it's just like, they're rookies because they've never played in the NHL.
It's the difference between North American ideas of hockey and the rest of the world.
Yeah, but the Russians were stomping the shit out of everyone in the 80s. So I mean, those guys were professional. I'm sorry. I mean, you know it as well as I do, as well as anybody. But yeah, so
question is, were they paid, and was it considered a legitimate professional league at the time? I think a lot of that weren't a lot of those guys playing hockey for the national teams because that was in lieu of military service?
Well, they were okay. So if you were on the national team, you played. Well, let me rephrase that. If you played for the Central Red Army, you were also in the Russian military. And the Central Red Army was basically the national team. They would add a few conscripts from other teams. So I'll give you for instance, when the Central Red Army, when they would play in an international competition, they would, perfect example, I wrote about this guy a couple of weeks ago, Helmut Balderas, who played for the North Stars. He was another one of those older Russian players who came over. Originally he was not on the Central Red Army, and then, they kept adding him to the national team, and then eventually they just put him on the Central Red Army team so that he could practice with these other guys and play with these other guys who were on the national team. Or like Arturs Urbe, I don't know if he played for the Russian national team, but I know he did end up on the Central Red Army team when they toured North America, although technically I don't think he ever actually played for them. But yeah, that's how it was. They were just like, well, if this team plays together all the time, then they'll just be better. But that actually killed Russian hockey in a way because, the Red Army team was so much better than all the other teams because they kept putting all the best guys on it. They'd always win, and then so people just got tired of it.
Well, and that was what I was saying. I thought I remember reading something about that, is if they were on that team as part of the military service, they weren't actually put into potential combat situations or, put out into active duty. They were on that team, and that was their job.
Yeah, I mean, pick one. Go to Afghanistan or play hockey. Hockey!
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so you got two so far. How about Pat Quinn?
Pat Quinn, I don't know. I don't know a lot about Pat Quinn.
Oh, but you just said it earlier in this podcast.
I did?
You did. Oh, no, you didn't.
See, my memory's horrible. I hinted?
You gave a hint earlier in this podcast. For those who are listening, Tim dropped a hint earlier in this podcast.
I did?
So,
See?
Pat Quinn was a big dude who did a lot of big bruising hits, right? He did a very famous body check in the late 60s.
Was that the elbow to the head of Stan Mikita?
Nope.
Oh. Because I think he did that once. All right, who did he take out?
Bobby Orr?
Bobby Orr. Oh, he's the one.
Yeah.
I remember, I was just playing coy.
Ah, okay, yeah. So now I've read that Orr got hit in the knee before that hit by Quinn, so it wasn't necessarily like, I've heard like, oh, and then he was never the same after that hit, but then I also heard, oh, he he got hit before that, so Quinn wasn't the guy. He just added injury to injury and not like the initial injury. In Bobby Orr's book, he talks about some Bruins fan, like just in like a hotel or something, like saying like, "Mr. Orr, do you want me to take out Pat Quinn?" Like, and he was like really serious. Like, I don't know if he showed him a gun or something, but he was just like one of these mobster types, and he was like, "No, that's okay. It's all good. It's just part of hockey." But that's how serious at least one fan took it.
Was Pat playing for the Flames at the time?
No, he would have been a Maple Leaf when he hit him.
Maple Leaf?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I think he would have been on Tirana. Let's see. He was a bit player with Toronto, for a little while. But yeah, so that was the controversy there.
So what's the Rogie controversy?
Okay, so this is not really on Rogie. This is on the NHL and its BS free agency rules. So Rogie signs, I want to say this was 78-79. I've also something I've written about for Puck Junk. I will link to this below the podcast. But 78-79 season, the Red Wings signed Rogie Vachon to a contract. He's a free agent. He was 30-something at that point. I don't know, was it 36, 30-something? Let me see something here. He was born 45, 55, 65, 70, 75, 67, 87. So he would have been like 34, right? 34-year-old goaltender. The Red Wings signed him. Now, you'll probably remember back in the 70s and 80s and even the early 90s, the NHL had these totally bogus rules about getting compensation if you lost a free agent. Do you remember that?
I'll say yes for argument.
Well, remember when Scott Stevens went from the Blues to the Devils?
Yes.
That was compensation. So
yes.
what would happen, this was to discourage teams from signing other teams' players, and that's how they kept these players trapped in perpetuity, where they would just keep giving them a little bit of a raise or no raise at all, or threaten to send them to the minors or whatever. So, they made it really hard to sign away players, because then you would lose something. You'd lose a draft pick, or you'd lose a player of comparable value. So I like to say it was like a forced trade. You sign my good player, I'm going to get your good player's compensation. So it's not really a signing anymore. You're not really making your team better. We're just swapping players. So the Red Wings sign Vachon, and they had a young up-and-coming player named Dale McCourt, who did extremely well for them in his rookie year. And so the Kings said, "We want Dale McCourt as compensation for you signing our 30-something goaltender." Totally unfair. I mean, that would be like getting an Auston Matthews or I don't say a Patrick Kane, because he's getting up there, although he's still awesome. But you could say it would be like getting a Patrick Kane for signing Evgeny Nabokov. Think about it that way, right? Like, well, I know Nabokov's retired, but even like towards the end of his career, he was good, and so that's what happened. So, so McCourt refused. He said, "No, I play for the Red Wings. I want to play for the Red Wings," and he basically sued the NHL. He sued the Kings. It went to court. They filed a temporary injunction, and they said, "Okay, you can stay with the Red Wings until we figure this nonsense out." And then the next year, the court ruled in favor of the Kings, and they said, "Nope, you know what? They get you as compensation." And then Topps did one of those head swaps where they put Dale McCourt on an LA Kings player's body, and he has his 79-80 hockey card has him as a member of the Kings, even though he never played for the Kings. That's actually what got me interested in the first place. When I saw this card, I'm like, I never knew Dale McCourt was a King, and then sure enough, he was only a King on paper and on cardboard, if you will. But the Kings basically realized that they kept offering him more money and he didn't want to play for them, so they just traded his rights back to the Red Wings because they just said, you know what, if we can't pay this guy to play for us, what's the point? But yeah, so Vachon, it wasn't his fault, but he was kind of the catalyst because he went and he signed with the Red Wings, and then the Red Wings lost Dale McCourt as compensation to the Kings, and then that became this like year-long legal battle.
Well, and didn't that also hurt Detroit from an offensive standpoint? Because I don't think Rogie was that great on Detroit, was he? I mean, they paid him a ton of money to go there.
I mean, I don't know. I
don't think his career was anywhere near what it would have been before that.
No, but I mean, Detroit in the late 70s was pretty bad. I mean, I remember reading Dennis Hull's book, The Third Best Hull, and the only reason why he played for Detroit was he did it as a favor to Ted Lindsay, who was, I think he was, I don't know if he was coach or GM, but Hull had retired from the Blackhawks, Dennis Hull, because they were cutting into his playing time. Bob Pulford was the coach, and he basically, when Pulford became the coach, he just basically treated all those Blackhawks that he used to play against, he treated them like shit, you know, Dennis Hull, Stan Mikita, all those guys. He wasn't nice to any of them. And so Dennis Hull quit. But then he came out of retirement to play with the Red Wings for a season to kind of help him out. And he regretted doing it because he said it was a bad way to end his career. It wasn't that exciting. But yeah, the Red Wings were pretty terrible in the late 70s. So they would have done anything to make themselves a little bit better. And so if that meant signing an aging goaltender, hey, you know, so be it. Because, I mean, you know, Rogie's a winner, as we've seen.
That is true. That's true. And goalies seem to, well, a lot of times goalies get better with age.
So, real quick before we end this, let's just talk about like who we think should be in the Hall of Fame. We know next year Teemu Selanne will be eligible. Huh?
Yes, he should be in there. That's my favorite topic. Who should be in there?
Jeremy Roenick. I'm just going to say it right now. Jeremy Roenick should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Why is he not in the Hockey Hall of Fame?
Hockey Hall of Fame needs more American players.
Okay. Needs more women, too.
Roenick,
no women were inducted this year?
No women were inducted this year.
Okay.
But I think that's a discussion for another time.
Absolutely.
But, I think there's a case could be made for Mike Richter, maybe. Tom Barrasso.
Oh,
maybe?
the Barrasso. The Tom Barrasso.
Obviously, Roenick, like you just said. John LeClaire.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of American-born players that I think deserve potential consideration. But, you know, my big one, other than Selanne, who should be in there, Paul Kariya. What about Paul Kariya? Nobody talks about Paul Kariya.
Yeah, that's a good.
That guy was great.
That
guy changed an entire city's viewpoint on hockey. Just like Gretzky brought hockey to Southern California, Paul Kariya he made hockey in Anaheim.
Mm-hmm.
He literally did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, beforehand they weren't selling the tickets like they should have. When Paul Kariya came to that team, they were selling 9,000 tickets just for practice.
Yeah, no, he was awesome. I mean, yeah, he gave them their first bona fide superstar. And what else is kind of funny is that
don't forget though. Remember in the was it the conference finals, or was it? I think it was Stanley Cup finals. Anaheim against New Jersey.
Paul
Kariya got crushed by Scott Stevens as well. Only he got up and skated off the ice. So he didn't lay there in a pile, and the person that did is now in the Hockey Hall of Fame. So I'm not trying to nitpick or anything. I'm just saying.
Yeah, you know, I mean, looking at Kariya's career, yeah, he was. I think maybe some people are a little too fixated on like the post Anaheim, like, oh well, he didn't do so well after Anaheim, but so what? what was I going to say? You know what I found interesting about Korea? Just looking at his stats really quick. In his first season, when he played for the Maine Black Bears in college hockey, he had a 100-point season, which is like unheard of in college hockey. Which is just awesome. I mean, I remember hearing about that, and like, you know, most of the time, like, college hockey guys would play like 40 games and they'd get like 32 points and that would be good, or they might get a point a game and that would be great, or a little bit. It was comparable to that, but to get like 2.5 points a game in college hockey was mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then of course it was always disappointing that he didn't play in the '98 Olympics because he is you know, of Japanese heritage, and they were looking forward to seeing him in Japan, and that didn't happen. Because he got, was it Gary Suter who hit him? Somebody hit him, and he had a concussion or something, and he just couldn't play in the Olympics that year.
Another big one,
Yeah.
in my mind, is the Wrecking Ball, Mark Recchi.
Uh-huh.
I think Mark Recchi needs to be in the Hall of Fame. He hasn't gotten enough votes since he was eligible in 14 to get there, but I mean, this guy, he played 22 years in the league.
Wow.
22 years. I mean, nobody does that except for Jaromir Jagr. And the fact that he won Stanley Cups with 3 different teams.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. Look at his numbers. I mean, 3 years, he was over 100 points. The 3 cups, the fact that his longevity, and that he was always one of the leading guys in whatever locker room he was in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You know, they might have
Mark
to.
Recchi definitely deserves it.
You know, they might have to put Jaromir Jagr in the Hall of Fame just so he retires.
He's gonna have his own wing
Uh-huh.
when he goes to the Hall of Fame.
Just one would be like the photos of like his hairstyles throughout the years.
That'd be an interesting
Mullet,
setup. Have
mullet,
have different head busts of him.
mulletary, or yeah. Oh yeah, with wigs, right? Then you could change it out, right? Like I always get tired of like when they talk about like the Baseball Hall of Fame, and the first thing I hate when they say first ballot when talking about Hockey Hall of Fame. I hate that term, first ballot, because that's a baseball thing, and I don't like that. And then the other thing that's really big about baseball is oh, and you know, like in baseball, if the player is in a first ballot Hall of Famer, it's like a big deal. Like, oh, well, you know, sometimes, you know, if depending on who else is eligible at the time or who's on the panel or whatever, you know, it's well, I know with baseball it's not a panel. Like hockey is your 18-person panel, and you have to get 2/3 of the vote. That's one thing that annoys me. And then in baseball, they always talk about, like, but what hat is he going to be wearing? Like, he played for 3 different teams, so is his Hall of Fame bust going to have a Chicago Cubs logo on the hat? Or is it going to have a Pittsburgh Pirates logo on the hat? I don't know who that could be. But you get my point, right? And you don't have that problem.
What team will Jagr go in as?
Oh, well, Penguin, obviously. But you see, that's...
You think that's obvious? I don't think that's obvious.
Well, let's see. The Flyers, the Rangers.
I don't think it's going to be any one of the individual teams necessarily, like the half season teams. But I don't know that it's a guarantee that he'll go in as a Penguin.
Well, but we don't have that. We don't even have that discussion with hockey.
No. Yeah.
Because
it doesn't come up because guys go in on their body of work as their career, and they are what they are. They're independent of a team.
Yeah. So, any last thoughts before I wrap it up?
Well, just a couple other names I wanted to throw out there.
Sure, go for it.
Andrew Chuck.
Yeah.
Played almost 1,700 games in the NHL. You know, you got other guys like here's a good one. Now that Makarov's been taken in and they're starting to, you know, recognize international play and Russians and stuff, what about Mogilny?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for what Makarov did as far as bringing Russians over here and breaking that barrier, Mogilny, I mean, once he was drafted and brought in, that pretty much opened up the floodgates for European and Russian players to be brought over. I mean, he doesn't have the goals, I guess. He's only got four 4-something, 470, 475. I don't remember what his totals are, but.
Oh yeah.
What about Chris Osgood? There's another one, Chris Osgood.
Was Osgood good, or was he just?
He was Osgood.
Was Chris?
He was Osgood as any other player.
Or was he just Osgood as the team that he was on?
Well, and that's the argument that you have to have on that.
I mean, did Osgood play as good on the Islanders, on the whatever other teams he was on?
Goaltenders can stand on their head regardless of what's in front of them. It's just, eventually you're going to give up goals if you get peppered to death.
Yeah, but you look at like Dominic Hasek, and he was awesome on any team that he played for.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously way better for Detroit, but he had a much bigger body of work on it for Detroit. So I don't know. They're names you can throw out there, and you can have that argument till the cows come home. But until you're one of the voters and stuff, that's really just it. We'll argue and throw out names, and we'll never know until we see next year.
Well, until then, until next year, until next podcast, I think we're just going to wrap it up here. I think our audience, if they haven't already hit the stop button, they're about to. So just want to say thanks for listening to this extended edition, hour-long, of the Puck Junk Podcast.
For more hockey goodness, follow us on Twitter @PuckJunk.